It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by the Riverview Hospital in Wisconsin Rapids and Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320, as well as on the web at WFHR.com. And today we welcome our good friends from River Cities Community Access Television as they're here videotaping our monthly visit with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink. Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, Carl.
Okay, well, with this hot weather, I noticed your counterpart up in Wausau, they announced some efforts to make sure that their work crew stays cool. They even opened up some cooling centers in the city of Wausau and in that vicinity. Is the city of Wisconsin Rapids taking any precautions?
Nothing particular that I know of. I know that they do respond to the heat just like they would any other, cold weather, hot weather extremes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But basically take it easy.
That's right.
Take it easy.
Both residents and obviously employees. Make sure you stay hydrated and all that good stuff.
Okay. Since we last visited, the governor has acted on the budget, and one of the things he vetoed was the money for the environmental study on the Highway 54 expansion,
right?
The bypass, as we're calling it. His argument in making that veto was that by the time we get the ducks in a row and this project is ready to go, we may need another environmental study, and this is putting the cart before the horse, as it were.
Right.
What was your thoughts?
Well, I think we need to be clear about the bypass projects. It's been talked about. There's really two pieces to it, and the project that was vetoed in the governor's budget was the bridge piece into Port Edwards. And so obviously, as you just mentioned and alluded to, that project is a long way off. I mean, I'm not sure if maybe it'll happen in my lifetime. I'm kind of young, but I can't say that it'll happen in my lifetime even. But the other piece of that project that the county and the city has discussed, and that was the grant application for the STP freight program, which is the extension of the 54 corridor from Home Depot essentially over to Highway 13, Sportsman's area.
Right.
All right. So that project still remains. The grant's been submitted for that. We're still in ongoing conversations with the county and others. Obviously, there's dollars involved at some point, so you've got to kind of work those things out. So we've been working with the highway commissioner and in our engineering department in my office to figure out what's the plausibility of that, the funding mechanisms, and that sort of thing. And ultimately, we're at the whim of the state in this, that if they decide to fund the grant application in August, then obviously we need to make sure we're ready and we're working proactively before that time.
What's your feeling? Do you get a sense that you got a good chance of getting this grant?
Well, because of the legwork that's been done for decades, if I look at the dates of some of the documents that have been produced, and it certainly has been not something that's been given a little bit of attention. It's been given quite a bit of attention too, and obviously the plans were shelved because of funding mechanisms, and it's all based on traffic counts and the necessity for something like this. I get a sense that given the amount of work that's been done to it, we are able to respond much quicker and follow their deadlines of about a 3-year turn so we can turn dirt. So it's not something that'll happen 10, 20 years. It's going to happen in a certain time frame.
Okay. By the way, folks, the phone lines are open at 715-424-2600 or pound 1320 on your U.S. cellular phone if you want to talk with Mayor Vruwink this morning. This is your opportunity. And we got our first call. Boy, you must have hit a hot button. Good morning. You're on the air with Mayor Vruwink.
Good morning.
Yeah? Okay. Try again. We lost you, buddy. I don't know if it was a bad sell or what. So we're going to go forward with that.
Sure.
There was another thing that came on my doorstep yesterday, and I thought we should talk a little bit about it. The city is going through the field work of doing the reassessment.
Right.
And
Reevaluation.
Reevaluation. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, as most people are aware, we do contract with an assessor's service, Steve Shepro's service, that he also does the assessment. His company does the assessment for the city of Green Bay, and I believe maybe another municipality, but definitely those two. And we've been contracting with another appraisal service, Bomar Appraisal, to do the reevaluation work because they have to go parcel by parcel throughout the city, commercial and residential, and take a look at the the evaluations or the assessments. Essentially, that work, from what I understand, will be wrapping up this fall. We've got Open Book, which was moved back because the tax rolls obviously weren't complete because of the going through all of the reassessment pieces. So that is going to be held off until late this October for those that wish to exercise their right to contest their property taxes. But as far as that work goes, I received a postcard at my house. They haven't been through my house. They've been getting through most of the parcels. Most of the property owners have let them in, which is customary. The piece with that was we were very close to being required by the state to do this. So when you get out of a certain ratio, I believe the 90% ratio or something very close, we're mandated to go through it, and we didn't quite get there. The downturn and things like that were some other effects on it, but yes, they're coming through and they're going to be doing this. The challenge with property taxes is if you take away from somewhere, you've got to add somewhere. So those that contest or wish to have their values reduced have to be added somewhere else, and so nobody wants to see that.
Right.
See their taxes go up and their valuations go up. So that's a dicey game, but the assessor's office has been working diligently. In fact, they just pursued an intern to enter all the data. They've actually been through this process, migrating everything online, so they don't have to go to a file cabinet and look at every parcel card, which is a great leap forward.
Yes.
When you're going through the motions, it takes a lot of time to do this, so why not conversely also enter it in the computer system? And their system is called Market Drive, and it's pretty robust. In fact, I'll be able to have access to it once they have all the information uploaded in the system when I get calls and questions about certain parcels. Wood County GIS provides a lot of the tax bill information online already, which is very handy, but the Market Drive will be a nice addition just to be a lot more efficient and get the information instead of having to go to the file cabinets.
Okay, let's talk a bit about why this is so important. First off, how often is this done? Is it supposed to be done every 10 years?
Yeah, they say, around that general rule of thumb. I know the city of Stevens Point, when I was a student there, had some challenges with their reevaluation piece just because again, we're out of that threshold,
right.
and they can be controversial just because when they were originally done and when they're done again, you have fluctuations in property values. I've been told the ranch-style homes in the community may have a slight bump, but some of the real low-end stuff that's really low-end in terms of under 100,000 may have a bump as well. And I'm a homeowner, and that piece would obviously affects me directly. But
what affects these people? That's with someone goes, hey, listen, I made some improvements, or my house needs a bunch of improvements, and I'm in the process of trying to raise funds, capital to do it.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they see that their valuation went up, or they're going, what happened here?
Right. Well, and that's part of it is a lot of the homes that maybe didn't have permits taken out to do the work are going to see a natural bump, right? Because there's improvements that have been made that haven't been caught before, and it's not catching them, but it's doing the right thing and getting a permit and going through that process. But yeah, that's the one piece is that those that have done work to their home, substantial work, maybe a kitchen remodel or something, and didn't get permits for it and didn't do it legitimately, and therefore they're going to see obviously an assessment increase.
Okay, let's get back to the phones. Good morning. You're on the air with Mayor Vruwink.
Yes, good morning, Mayor, and another good program, I'm sure, is in suing here. A couple questions, and that is, how close are we to getting the large garbage cans and going into the hooking them up, and they just tip on in? And I know that's on the horizon, but how soon? And our second question is, are we getting any closer to putting police reports online? Green Bay has a system where, as a landlord, you could check the morning of that you thought that you might have a problem, or even as soon as they're entered in the car with the squad, it goes right up online. It's public record, and so it's not really impacting much of anybody, but it's giving us information we need. I'll listen off the air, and thank you for your answers.
Okay, thank you for your call.
Yes, thanks for the call. The first question was regarding the canisters. And a lot of municipalities, if you're in the town of Grand Rapids, I noticed they've switched to canisters. The town of Seneca is canisters. We've looked at it as a two-step approach because we have 2 garbage trucks, 4 garbage employees, and then we have a recycling truck and then 2 recycling employees. We haven't made the final decision. Council hasn't acted on anything yet, but both have been looked at. I can propose that recycling will be first, that we're going to introduce large canisters for recycling and look at switching to a weekly pickup for recycling at no additional cost, obviously, to the taxpayer is our hope because of the fact that canisters, you have 1 less employee riding the truck, so you're able to compensate for that difference. Plus, that's also going to allow us to incentivize the recycling program. I get the reports every month about what's recycled and what's landfilled, and it astonishes me the low recycling rate of our residents. And I think by having a large collection bin is going to be one step toward allowing us to collect more recyclables. The challenge is we would probably go to a single stream collection system, meaning all of the paper and all of the plastic and cans and glass all is going to go into one bin.
Therefore,
simplify it. In the Portage County MRF, it's called, their Veolia's, which we contract in for all of our recycling, would have to separate the paper, bale it back into Rapids, and then Paperboard, Corenso is one of the large buyers for that recycled paper locally. In fact, they buy everything that's baled in the city. So there's going to be some other domino effects related to the recycling collection, but as far as the garbage collection, we just purchased garbage trucks in the last couple of years, and the challenge is, do you purchase new garbage trucks again and not get the full life and the full expected value out of those and then go to a garbage collection? Frankly, I'd do it tomorrow if we could, but just as we looked at the numbers, it may not make sense. But that's not set in stone. We may move in tandem with the two, but it sounds like recycling will be first because our recycling truck is really close to needing replacement, and we've got the funds to be able to do it.
And police records online.
Police records online. That's the first time I've heard of other municipalities having it. I understood that there was access available, but I don't know of any timeline that the police department has put on that, so I will definitely get back to the caller on that. But it sounds like a great idea. In fact, one of the police lieutenants is on our Government 2.0, or Gov 2.0 tech piece that we've talked a little bit on air about. He's on my steering committee for that, and I know he's deeply interested and involved in trying to modernize the way the police department collects that information and puts it out there. So I can't imagine it wouldn't be something that would be a major undertaking if other municipalities have done it.
Okay, let's get back to our next caller. Good morning. Thanks for waiting. You're on the air with the mayor.
Good morning. I'd like to find out the status of the sidewalk for Washington School. I sure hope they get that done before school starts, but it's coming up awful quick. And the second part of that question is, will they consider extending that sidewalk all the way to 32nd Street so all them seniors in them housings will have access to the walkway over to Baker Street stores and et cetera?
Sure. Great question. In fact, I'm glad I just got the answer on that a couple of days ago. I was wondering the same thing. It sounds like the environmental document, which we talked about,
right,
the Highway 54 piece, that's the stage it's in. It's still in an environmental stage, unfortunately. And the engineer tells me that it may not be back this year for construction yet this year, which is frankly disappointing. We went through all the motions last year, and I don't know the timelines or why some of those things have to take so long, but that's the understanding I got, is that the sidewalks may not be put in this year, and it doesn't sound like they will be for this school year.
Is there any consideration of putting it up to the Baker Street area, or is that whole project contingent on the Baker Street?
Baker Street or 32nd Street. 32nd Street, my understanding is it stops at Washington School, essentially, that was part of the Safe Routes to School grant. And the federal funds covered that portion of it. I don't believe there was additional monies available. In fact, they were close to utilizing more money than what obviously they needed, what they had hoped to utilize for that project.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I keep thinking about West Grand Avenue, and I hate to have that happen because then all of a sudden there will be all kinds of action. Let's do it before that happens.
Absolutely, I agree. In fact, I was just talking with someone last night who's a property owner along that stretch about extending the sidewalks. It makes sense. We can't build sidewalks in part. I mean, they have to be consistent, and they have to take the whole length of a street. So I don't know if there's another Safe Routes to School opportunity to fund that, but it certainly is something definitely for consideration.
Thank you. I'll follow up
the feedback
at another date.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your call. Again, 424-2600, pound 1320 on your U.S. cellular phone. That just demonstrated that even just putting in a sidewalk involves a lot of bureaucratic steps.
Months, and in this case, it was years. I mean, I was only involved in it, obviously, starting last May, but the school, Washington School and the school district has been deeply involved for many years, the engineering department, the police department, all those people. So I'm fully supportive of it because of the fact that we can't deny someone the safe path to school. I mean, that's just the reality, especially if you live so close to school. A lot of their housing around there. In fact, there's going to be a new housing development the Plan Commission will be taking up in August, their August meeting for yet some more apartments in that area with Swiderski. It's been talked about before, so it's not a brand new project, but they're going to be acting on that piece, whether or not to allow it. And again, I'd like to think that's going to be more youth potentially living in there, more families, and so getting them to school is very important, safely.
Okay, let's get back to the phones. Good morning. You're on the air with the mayor.
Thank you. I use 17th Avenue North almost every day. Those railroad track crossings are terrible. I wonder if a little pressure could be put on the officials of the railroad to maybe get those repaired. Thanks.
Okay. 17th Avenue North, some bad crossings.
Thanks for the call.
And that's been an issue before in the city. I mean, for a while here, we had one just down the road here.
Right.
That took a while to get the railroad company to...
Railroad's a challenge to deal with. They move very slowly, and it's typically on their own accord. They whether it's putting a recreational crossing across the railroad, they don't like to typically do too much additional than what they've already committed to. But I'll definitely take note. I know the train whistles have been still an issue that the Public Works Committee still has on their referral list, and we get some feedback every once in a while on those. So maybe in tandem we can have a conversation about the crossing on 17th Ave North.
Let's talk a little bit about geese and ducks. The city, the council basically is going with the status quo, and I noticed there was some an effort this week or just recently to gather up some of the geese and some of the parts of the city, and their meat is now being tested to see if it can be sent to food pantries and the like. Talk a little bit about the reaction and everything to this whole issue.
You know, it's interesting for me in the position that I have to have feedback on both sides. I get one complaint and I get one essentially support for what we did, and it's a challenge to deal with this. And my position always has been we have an overpopulation of the geese. Are we ever going to eradicate them, and should we ever eradicate them? No. We have a river running right through the middle of our city, and so it's illogical to think that we'll ever eradicate 100% of them. The challenge and the questions I'm getting now are, okay, you've rounded up the geese, you've gotten rid of a good portion of the population, which hopefully should last us for quite some time in the future, is now do we ban the feeding of all waterfowl? And
how are you going to enforce that, for one thing?
That's the challenge that I say. You know, it's great to have a law in the books. We've got that with some other ordinances, and it's a challenge when people look at certain ordinances maybe not enforced as well as they could or should be, and this would be yet one more of those ordinances that you'll see some kid feeding the ducks, and it's going to turn out to be this big
freeze.
Right. Yeah. In the police department, I haven't really entertained much conversation with the enforcement question, but to me, on the surface, I can't imagine how we would do it. You either patrol or enforce speed limits, or you enforce feeding the waterfowl.
Yeah, I think they got more important issues to worry about.
That's my feeling, and it certainly has merits, the thought does, but reality tells me otherwise.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you just got to, like Green Bay, they were looking at banning saggy pants or jeans.
Oh, right, yeah.
And they decided, no, this isn't enforceable.
Right. Nuisance ordinances send a message, but they really don't necessarily carry a lot of merit.
Since we're talking about ordinances, it's been a while since the city adopted its cell phone ordinance. How has that been going? Is that being enforced?
The police chief and I have had a conversation about that because it's one of those challenges that since the state hasn't taken on any further action beyond the texting and the kind of the emailing ban that they enforced, but while driving, it's it's a challenge to enforce again, because and I've seen what the former Voice newspaper was doing for a while, taking pictures of distracted driving. A lot of them, people were on their cell phones. It's a habitual thing. When I leave the city, I use my hands free, and I don't have to. It's just more convenient because you kind of get yourself in that habit. But they do enforce it. But they also allow people to, if number one, if they're a transient person, if they don't live in the city, they're not a resident, they're typically not aware of the little red signs that
what it means.
Talk, when you come in the city. But you talk to people in Marshfield who've had the ordinance on the books for a long time. They've definitely seen changes in behavior. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, and I think we all have to be fair to ourselves that those that have the habit of talking on their phone without any sort of hands-free device, it's not something you can just say as a habit you're going to pick it up again and start doing it, which isn't the right thing, but it's just what happens. And so they've been enforcing it. It's just a matter of, do you write tickets again for something like that, and you give them a written warning in the beginning, and then you make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay. We just had a very nice 4th of July celebration, a wonderful fireworks pyro musical, which
we did.
Our sister station, WRCW, was very proud to be a part of in terms of helping to broadcast that. There was still a little controversy about no howitzers. To me, I'm sorry, I didn't miss the howitzers. No disrespect to our service people. God love you. Thank you for your service. But I just thought the atmosphere was a lot more tranquil and more festive without the all of a sudden scary boom.
Right, and the acoustics this year were much better. It sounded the sounds you could hear. I was on the corner of the West or East Grand Bridge, I guess, the Grand Avenue Bridge right on the corner, and you could hear them as plain as day, which last year it was very difficult to hear any sort of the sound that was going along with it for the choreography. But I thought it was great. The show was long. I gotten feedback from people that were out of town, but also had brought family in from out of town, from cities as large as San Francisco, that really appreciated the show that we put on in a smaller city like we did.
Yeah, and I was over by Veterans Park, and the crowd there was in a festive mood, clapping with the music, and it was just a really fun event. And
Exciting.
It looked like the band that played, and then you had the city band across the way. The city had a wonderful look and vibe about it that day.
It did.
And it's nice. I'm sure as the mayor,
it was beautiful weather, and you smile when you have an event where you've got the weather's great and the wind's blowing in the right direction. All these little things that you think about, but no question. And I think it was really well attended. The vendors obviously do well. It's a great opportunity for them to get new customers and to see new people that they may not have as customers regularly, so that's a nice piece. I know the kettle corn line was particularly long. I waited in line for kettle corn a long time myself.
You always wait in line for kettle corn.
Somebody had said you need 2 kettle corn vendors next year. That was good feedback. But no, I think the show went very well. And one little tweak, we have the LED lights now on the bridge, so when the show was over, the lights came on, and you didn't have to wait for them to warm up, which was kind of nice, so people could vacate safely out of that area as well.
And that was nice that they were off, because that added to the visual aspect of the fireworks.
Yeah.
So you didn't have the street lighting interfering with the enjoyment of the fireworks.
It does cost the city some dollars. We have to pay the water and light utility to come and shut the lights off, unfortunately, but that's the nature of the business that we're in. And it was the decision we made, that you do shut off the street lights, because it does add to the atmosphere of the show.
But overall, a good, and a lot of people who've worked on this. You had a fireworks committee, a lot of different organizations, the Encourage Community Foundation with the fund.
Teen Fireworks
Committee.
It's amazing how much dollars they raise, and every year, they've already got a jump start on next year, and when they at the event, they actually take donations there. The other cool thing is they just are very excited about participating, which is really neat.
That's great, and
at that age,
they put in a lot of work.
Lots of hours.
They put in a lot of hours selling a lot of cotton candy.
Yeah, they certainly do. Every event they're at, trying to raise a few bucks.
We're going to take one more call, and then we got to pay the bills for the first time this morning. You're on the air with the mayor.
Yes, good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
I want to applaud the city of Wisconsin Rapids. I don't live there, but I like what you're doing, like you're adding trees and the little project for the bridge for the lights. And then also I noticed on West Grand you have the containers with the flowers and things like that. I know some people say, well, that's a waste of money, and I differ. I think that you need to have a beautiful city in order to attract people. And could you address a little bit more about what your plans are for the future as far as, containers and I believe there's a grant that Mary Brazo Brown has carried through for her father on the Hopa trees. I think I read that in the paper.
Yes.
And if you want to just address a little bit of your plans for the future for beautification of Wisconsin Rapids.
Excellent. Thanks for the call and the feedback.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll listen offline.
Thank you for your call.
The pieces that you've just referenced are obviously just a start, and it's just one of these little aesthetic things that make a big difference to somebody that's coming to the city for the first time. As residents, we drive around and we become numb to a lot of the things that are here.
Yeah, we take it for granted.
Absolutely, and we talk about the planters up in Ward 1 or on West Grand Avenue that were originally downtown that just weren't really a good fit for the area in the downtown. So part of the plans, so we still have 7 more planters that'll be planted, likely extended throughout West Grand. We've got the school zone, obviously, that's drawn some attention. We talked about safe routes to school, and we thought maybe a good place to put them is in the school zone. It gives you more of a residential street as opposed to a highway feel when you've got some beautification to it. At least that's what the studies tell us with buffer zones and that sort of thing. As far as other beautification, I can speak to there's been some interest in generating a group, some activity around boulevards, and you drive through a city closest Plover for a town village closest Plover. Other cities that have done some really nice things with their medians, their boulevards, essentially in between the highway. The tree piece was a multi-year investment we're going to be making in the trees, and again, some people may say, well, that's not a really good use of dollars, when frankly I disagree. And you look through communities, you drive through communities that may have even a forester on staff. We don't have that luxury here, but we do have expertise to be able to draw on to make sure that we plant the right trees going forward. But trees, definitely, the boulevard piece that I mentioned, or the medians that people see that at this time of the year look very scabby because of the amount of weeds that are growing. Banners is something, as the poles continue to reintroduce the new decorative poles, there's going to be more banners introduced, and we need to get the summer banners ordered. I see they still don't have anything up on those, so that's a piece there. But I'm looking this as an invitation, I guess, to residents that have a passion around gardening or just that natural beauty to contact my office. We'd like to get a group around beautification going, similar to the Love Your Block initiative.
It's a curb appeal issue.
Absolutely, yeah, and it doesn't require a ton of investment, especially when you pair it with volunteers. We saw that with the teen leadership group that helped the engineering department plant all those trees and all those shrubs around the 2-mile detention pond, which could have been an empty hole in the ground, but they really took the effort to be able to beautify it. And there's so much more. Even when I come over to the West Side Industrial Park over here, there's so much more beautification. When you drive through a community that has hanging baskets, I was up in Ashland over the weekend, and you can drive through that community and you see there's some vibrancy because they've taken the time to put hanging baskets on some of their light poles in some of their downtown areas or whatever. But it is an investment worthwhile, and it's definitely worth making.
Because when you're showing a prospect, that's that curb appeal that they're going, oh, this is a nice town. This has a nice vibrancy, as you put it.
Right.
One area I noticed right behind City Hall, Jackson Street there, that bit of the street needs repair real bad. What's the plans for that?
Well, they've talked about for a long time, as long as I can remember, the sweeping curve, if you will, getting rid of that kind of T intersection there, which makes sense since the traffic is flowing through there. I don't have a date on that, but I know that that's been on the chart for a number of years, and so I'd imagine in the next 3 to 5 years that would be one of those that would be reconstructed. That we've had some issues with the trees around City Hall. It's one of those buildings that maybe isn't the most aesthetically pleasing, and so we need to get some more trees. We pulled some trees out, and they found out apparently that they can't replant them because of some underground utilities, which is unfortunate. They didn't have the planning in place to figure that out beforehand, but they will be replacing those. The rain garden that's around City Hall, which doesn't necessarily have the best look to it, is also going to be having some rehab going in the future too.
Okay, we're going to take our first break. We're visiting with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink here on the Morning Magazine, which, as always, is brought to you by Riverview Medical Center. With you, it's personal and Comfort Air.
River City's Community Access now has a newly designed website. Visit rccamedia.org to learn about community promotion in the Wisconsin Rapids area. There you can find our social media links as well as our new YouTube channel. This channel is always being updated with new content like Community Connections, Community Snapshot, The Morning Magazine with Carl Hilke, encourages Are You In?, City of Wisconsin Rapids meetings, and much more. You can navigate straight to the YouTube channel by typing youtube.com/RCCA Media into your web browser. Videos are available anytime, 24/7. So please check out what the new website and YouTube channel have to offer.
Once again, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry. And again, the phone lines are open at 424-2600, pound 1320 on your U.S. cellular phone. Your opportunity to talk to Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink, and we had a lot of great participation in the first half hour, so let's keep it up, gang. Everybody wants to sell stuff on Over the Back Fence. Just wait a while, okay? Let's get the people a chance to talk with their mayor. Yesterday afternoon, you met at 5 p.m. for the city council meeting. What was the reason for that?
Kind of earth-shattering. The council meeting moved from their normal 6 p.m. time slot to 5 p.m. I'll tell you, kind of interesting the feedback I got of just making that 1 hour time.
Really?
Change. Yeah, just because it's different.
Okay.
It's a different time slot. I happened to have the opportunity to throw out the opening pitch for UWSP's alumni night, Purple and Gold night. So that was at 6:30, and so just
at the Raptors game, yeah.
At the Raptors game, so I had the opportunity to do that, and it was pretty neat. And so we had to move up the council meeting to make sure we got through. We had a light agenda yesterday.
Yeah, I noticed. I was looking through this.
The shortest meeting I've ever ran since becoming mayor.
I mean, I
believe someone said
it's your basic running of the city type of an agenda, and nothing real earth-shattering or
no. In fact,
controversial.
We've had some committee decisions, and I'd like to maybe take the opportunity to talk about them on air.
Go right ahead.
The HR committee took up on Monday night. We had made a referral to introduce limited-term employees for some of our employee classifications. Everyone knows that some of the work that the city does is seasonal, and whether it's working in some of the aspects of the parks, maybe doing some of the street work, some of that work can be seasonal, requiring less than a full-time employee to do the work. And we've had some vacancies in some of those departments, and so we're looking at the opportunity, not going forward replacing all employees with LTEs. That just doesn't make sense. It'd be impossible to do that. We've got to collect garbage year-round. We've got to plow streets in the winter, regardless of whether or not there's snow. We've got to have snow plow truck drivers on hand, but there's some part of our labor force that could be more seasonal, and we've had summer help for a number of years, but they're paid just above minimum wage, so it's hard to recruit staff, essentially. A lot of them are college students home for the summer, but they can make more money sometimes working at McDonald's than they can working for the city. So to get a little bit more competitive and to attract a little bit broader group of employees, I met with HR and the street department to look at introducing limited-term employees, and unfortunately the HR committee decided that they weren't ready to take it up and take any action on it, which is disappointing. Some of the comments made at the committee meeting were that we've tried this before and it hasn't worked, and comments like it's never going to work, or it's changed, and why do we want to change? And it's like it was a firm affirmation, and that's why I mentioned it on my radio show, because it was a true telling sign that we want change, but yet we don't want that kind of change. And frankly, when it comes to reprioritization of resources, when you make full-time hires, you have so many roll-ups, right? And again, we're not replacing our labor force going forward with limited-term employees, LTEs as they're referred, but just introducing the classification for the ability to hire a couple of more seasonal employees, maybe during the summer, during our construction season, if we're light with truck drivers. People take vacations, there's injuries, those sorts of things. Sure. So it allows us to be a little bit more nimble. But unfortunately, the committee decided not to take any action and move it forward. And they claim they're going to take it up at the next HR committee meeting. And my hope is that they'll follow through on that piece, that they'll create that classification so we have more flexibility in hiring more employees that way.
Did you give them more between now and then? Are you going to be giving them any additional information to try and educate? That sounds like they were afraid of the unknown.
Yeah, it didn't seem like they were even interested to find out what the conversations were. They came out with the conversation that we're not going to approve this tonight. Well, and frankly, it was a referral that was made to invoke some conversation.
Yeah.
And the three of us, HR, Public Works, and myself, were there to answer any questions. There was a memo drafted from the HR department to discuss some of these pieces, why it makes sense to at least introduce the classification. But we're going to have conversations next week to articulate why it makes sense to introduce limited-term employees for residents that may not be aware. It's the ability to have up to 1,000 hours for a certain position that wouldn't be a full-time employee then.
Okay. This leads to the whole question of changing culture or changing a bureaucracy.
Right.
When you try to get people, especially it seems in government, the word change scares people to death. And we've always done it this way. We're always going to do it this way.
Right.
Well, that's how you got in the mess you were in.
That's right. And you have to think differently. You know, from me, my perspective is organizationally, right?
Right.
A large part of my role is administration. I work 8 to 5, longer hours than that, typically just doing administration, wearing the administrator's hat. But it's also warranted that you start taking a look at these opportunities when they do arise. So if you've got a departure, whether it's a resignation or whether it's a retirement, through attrition, you take a look at those pieces. So if you can hire maybe 2 limited-term employees and replacing instead of hiring 1 full-time employee, well, you've got 2 more bodies that you can put to work and do that much more work in the summertime. We've had seasonal workforce for forever, and whether it's our compost sites, people manning our compost sites now, or our seasonal employees, to me it just makes sense. And I've heard feedback from some residents that why do you have all these employees maybe when you don't need them in certain parts of the year? Well, this is an opportunity for us to maybe classify some of those that are more seasonal type labor in that area.
Okay, let's get back to the phones. Good morning. You're on the air with the mayor.
Good morning. I missed the first part of your program. Anything brought up about the voice?
The question, no, there was no question about the voice specifically.
And I don't, and it's a private enterprise.
Right.
I don't know what the city can do.
The city's, my office had a subscription. The city attorney drafted some communication to the owner of the voice to clarify the city's position, or the city attorney's position, to issue refunds. Obviously, my department paid for subscription. I know the voice has a different position. I haven't waded into it deeply. The city attorney's office did take it on just because we questioned ourselves whether or not we were owed refunds. I know that some residents have those questions, but maybe you've got something, Carl, on that.
Nope. I have nothing new to, and I would.
I guess I'd entertain the question if the caller wants to call back, but I'm guessing that's what it's regarding.
Yeah, and that gets into legal consumer
protection
issue
type of thing, right? It's on the voice itself, it's disappointing. I know Jeff very well, and I've worked with him in the position that I've been in even before. It's disappointing to see an entity like that go out of business. The paper, as he alluded, he said we started out online, and our biggest presence is online. We've been
they're not going out of business, but
right.
The print edition will no longer
cease, right?
But the Capital Times in Madison.
Yeah, right.
It's the same way. I mean, it seems to be the trend, and they say it's going to be even more of a growing trend with this is your field of expertise, with the growth of tablet computers. You're going to see more and more publications going digital.
The other piece with the voice that was a challenge for the city is that we're our official newspaper, so we had to go back and now obviously offer to the Daily Tribune. They were the lowest bidder when we went to publication, so now they're going to be printing all of our notices, obviously, so those things will still be out there, but it forced us to shift gears pretty quickly that when the voice ceased publication, their print publication, to now going exclusively online, it forced us to react a little bit.
Going back to talk about changing the bureaucracy, you've started the process of implementing this. I always forget the name of the
rapid improvement.
Yeah, and it involves what's the
the Lean Six Sigma methodology.
Lean Six, yeah.
I'm glad you bring it up. Today is actually, we're going to start our training. Yesterday, the steering committee met, which is comprised of 8 city employees, myself included, and a number of other city employees that are not managers, that are not in management positions, or at the department head level, I should say. So they've actually set the stage for what's to come. We had some interesting conversation about metrics, and for those that have worked in the business world that have the need to measure performance, we started asking ourselves really and scratching our heads saying, what is it that we measure as a city? Do we measure customer satisfaction? Do we measure response times? Well, we do some of that, and our police and fire, our public safety group, obviously have to respond in emergencies. So by nature, they have some metrics about their response time and how many calls they make and that sort of thing. But we didn't really have, on the surface anyways, to me, it wasn't apparent that we measure a lot of other things. We kicked off the Rapid Improvement Initiative at the library with myself giving a presentation to city employees, just giving them kind of just the basics for it. And one of the ideas that was brought up there was the pothole, is what's the process it takes to get a pothole filled. So if a resident calls in or a staff member finds that we need to fill a pothole, what are the steps that need to be taken to fill that hole today that get done? Frankly, they take too long to get accomplished. It's the same thing when someone has a complaint about a tree limb over the sidewalk. Well, what are the steps and how long does it take to actually get that rectified? So the steering committee met yesterday to talk about these things with metrics, and we've got some homework to do, frankly. But it's going to be a good conversation to have, because that's where you talk about culture change. Government doesn't, by nature, look at customer satisfaction. They look at, well, we intended to do this job, but did it get accomplished the way we were hoping to? Well, if it didn't, we had to rework it, and that's where the time comes in of the waste that Lean Six Sigma hopes to eradicate. The other piece was just communicating with employees and saying, what are the problems? What are out of 4 classifications, what are the issues that people have, the complaints either residents have or individual departments have of each other? So we're going to be issuing, starting on Friday, for the next 2 weeks, a process where all department heads and all employees will be able to submit in complaints and issues that they have about themselves, about the way things take, wish things could be better, because that'll be our master kind of our working plan, just to give us our basis for what are all the issues that the rapid improvement or the Lean Six Sigma program will look to achieve at some point.
What's been the overall feedback you're getting from employees now that they understand more about what this whole process is all about? Are they embracing it?
Well, there was a little bit of apprehension, as is natural, regarding
Sure.
Lean Six Sigma, just because the private sector looks at it much differently than the public sector. The private sector is looking to increase the bottom line. For us, it's about freeing up time. So if it's 2 hours at the end of the week where somebody has time to work on some other pressing issue, they now have 2 more hours at the end of the week. It's not about reducing headcount. Headcount reduction will happen naturally when you get more equipment that's more efficient and faster and bigger. You may not need as many people. We talked about garbage collection. The same thing is true there. So, but back to the piece with rapid improvement or the Lean Six Sigma, once they got past and understood the methodology that it isn't about the headcount reduction, it's been interesting because we now have a full class. We have more people than we ever expected to have interest. In fact, we may even run a second class next spring with the completion of this class. The other piece I'd mention for our listeners is we submitted a grant to the workforce training program within the Wisconsin Technical College system, and they're paying $7,000 of the training for us through a grant opportunity. So it was a beautiful partnership for us, not only to partner with Midstate for our training, where they're coming to us. We're all going to be in the police training room this afternoon for 4 hours for our first of our 17 sessions. It's going to be a long process for all of us to go back to school.
This is a serious effort.
It absolutely is. And it really hit me yesterday when we had staff sitting in the room talking about how they can steer this process, that it isn't me just driving this, that, yeah, I'm going to be a partner, I'm going to try to champion along the way, but it's going to be coming from within, that employees are now going to have a voice. And I think that's when people started to turn the corner and saying, you know what, this is something I want to be a part of, because if I'm not there, I don't participate, I don't have a voice. And it's the same thing when people don't show up at the ballot box. They really can't complain because they haven't exercised their right to vote. It's the same thing when it comes to improving the culture and improving the way the city does business.
Bottom line, and then for the taxpayer, the bottom line is a more efficient and user-friendly city government.
Responsive. So, for example, all the way down to the pothole. When the pothole complaint comes in, how quickly can we demand of ourselves to get that fixed? So it's going to be exciting. It's going to take some time. That's the other thing that was kind of dawned on us yesterday, that, wow, we have a lot of work to do even on the metric side. Are we measuring things? Well, yeah, we measure safety and lost time, but have we ever set metrics out for ourselves that we're going to reduce this by 10% this year? We've never set those priorities for ourselves, and maybe because we haven't had to, we haven't had the conversations or the leadership maybe that wanted to do it, but now we do. So it's going to be a cool opportunity going forward.
Okay, we got to take one more break, and then we'll get back to your phone calls. Here on the Morning Magazine, we're visiting with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink. Now that the governor has acted on the budget, it's signed, it's in law, what impact is it going to have on the city of Wisconsin Rapids? Are you still evaluating it? What are you learning?
Well, the departments are still evaluating on the state level for many of the pieces. There's a couple of pieces that we have talked about on our radio show in the past. Number one was residency, and the governor left that piece intact, didn't take any further action. It was obviously his idea originally, so it's not likely he's going to veto his own provision.
But that might be a court challenge because the city of Milwaukee is fighting it, and they're going on the home rule clause in the state constitution.
Right, and they're going to invest resources to fight it. We're going to take the position that that has been enacted, but there is a provision in there that allows us to create an ordinance to require certain individuals that are related to emergency response and that type of thing to live within a certain radius, and we're going to exercise that piece. We're evaluating who those people are right now. Largely, it's going to my provision or my proposal will be those that are plowing snow. Those are the water and light utility is looking at those that need to respond in kind of a power outage situation. They were also opposed to it in the budget. budget. The reality, my frank feedback, is there was way too much policy in the budget. The budget is a financial document, and for them to govern and to hammer on local control, hammer on local municipalities was ridiculous. It was very irritating. The other piece that affects us is there was a provision that remained intact that was not a governor proposal, I don't believe, was the fees. So any fee that's collected, so some municipalities have pulled the garbage collection, for example, fee out of the tax bill. We've done that with our stormwater utility. We all get a sewer or a stormwater, if you have a business and a parcel, you get assessed a stormwater runoff fee to help curtail and pay for the DNR requirements that the city has to comply with for these detention and retention ponds and all that jazz. So one of the rules was in there that if you institute a fee after the passage of the budget, you have to reduce your tax levy by that same amount. So therefore, further hammering on local control and telling local municipalities what they can't do. And if the residents support it, then if they decide that it's a worthwhile investment or a fee or whatever it ends up being, no one likes them. But the state budget included that provision. And right now the Department of Administration is looking at that and how they're going to enforce it. So the League of Municipalities, our lobbying arm, has been looking at that and dicing it and figuring out ways. But their interpretation is that any sort of fee that the city or a municipality enacts after July 2nd, after the budget was passed or signed into law, was that you'll have to reduce your tax levy. And so it's yet another one of these foolish ways to try to hammer on local control.
Well, you know what? And this goes back, and I've said this before. I used to hammer when the Democrats were in control. I hammered on them about some of these issues. Now the Republicans are in control. I'm going to hammer on them. Both these parties, when they get in power, they like to tell local governments what to do. And that's not their job.
Right. When those individuals may be in local elected office, they like the local control, but when it gets changed to
exactly. Or when they're in the
swings.
Yeah, when they're in the minority party and they're all for local control, but when they get in the majority party, okay, you're going to do this.
Classic case of politics. The other piece that we did, municipalities were spared, which was a good thing that the governor did veto, was there was this rule that they had to, I think the state of Oklahoma has it, but you have to index any expenses over $200 have to be put online. And the governor said it best. It'd be impossible for local municipalities to, it's going to be a burden, and it's going to cost them money to do it, right?
Yes.
Time, resources, whatever. So we're all for sunshine in government, but that we have the Freedom of Information Act, we have open records requests, ability for people to ask the information of their government if they wish, and it's just a crazy thing. So we weren't ready for it, so he did veto that piece, thankfully.
Yes, I remember that veto. The bottom line is, I think Madison would cause a lot less trouble or have a lot fewer problems if they would stop micromanaging local governments.
Right.
Let local governments
to ban high-calorie sodas or large sodas. I don't know which lobby was pushing for that, but frankly, if my municipality thinks it's of their best interest to limit the size of sodas being sold, they can do that. Drink 2 sodas then to get around it if you want to have 2 sodas.
A conservative from the Wisconsin Policy Research Institute wrote a column, and he actually blasted the Republican Party for doing some of these things, saying, this is stupid. This is not what we're supposed to be about. We're being just as bad as we said the other side was when we start micromanaging.
Budgets are all about opportunities to invest and to do different things that maybe didn't work in the previous budget cycle. And between the policy that was instituted and frankly, the League of Municipalities in the Urban Alliance, which now I have a position on their leadership board, took the position that cities are the catalyst for economic development. And if you continue to hammer on these cities and reduce their ability to levy taxes, maybe, and again, nobody likes to raise taxes, and people know my position on property taxes, but this gives us the opportunity to be able to invest in ways we didn't before. And to strike that ability from us is nearly impossible in a lot of cities. Thankfully, the city of Wisconsin Rapids has practiced some pretty prudent and kind of conservative fiscal practices, but some cities just their hands are tied. They're not able to do anything different, and it wasn't a good budget overall for local municipalities.
Yeah, and so we're going to have to see what happens. But I guess that's why we have elections, and that's something to talk about with the candidates who vie for state legislative offices in the next election cycle next year, is to talk about, what do you see?
It's law for 2 years, and we'll roll with it, and that's what we have to do. We have to just operate within the confines that we're given.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you're going to be going to class and you're going to be busy. So
I'm going to be busy, yes. The next 17 weeks of classroom training are going to be busy.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how this affects the city. Maybe as you go through this process, you could bring some folks from the various departments and talk to our listeners about how this is being implemented and how it's going to affect our taxpayers.
Fair enough. Sounds great.
Okay. Well, sir, you stay cool and have a good rest of the week.
Same to you, Carl. Thank you.
And that is Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink. And with that, we'll wrap up today's edition of the Morning Magazine. The Morning Magazine, as always, has been brought to you by Riverview Medical Center, with you it's personal, and Comfort Air. CBS News is next, and then it's time for Over the Back Fence.